What's the most weird/terrifying confession you've heard from someone that was drunk? User, Taco Bell Trauma 69, said. So one night, I got absolutely obliterated at my cousin's bachelor party. I don't remember much, but apparently, I disappeared for 2 hours and came back with a full Subway sandwich, a fake mustache, and no pants. Next morning, I woke up on the floor of my buddy's garage under a kiddie pool full of pool noodles, wearing a tutu and someone else's socks that had pineapples on them. I also had $14 in Canadian coins. We live in Arizona. But here's the confession. Apparently, during my blackout, I wandered into a gas station bathroom, saw my reflection, panicked, and convinced myself I was being followed by a guy who looked exactly like me. So naturally, I left a voicemail on my own phone warning myself that the clone is loose and to trust no one, especially not the guy in the mirror. I only remembered when I played the message the next day. The worst part? I ended it with, "Godspeed me." To this day, I still have that voicemail saved. Every once in a while, I listen to it when I feel down. That version of me might have been drunk, but damn if he wasn't loyal. Another user, user 1368351, said, it was the summer before my final year in college, and I was working at a gas station off Route 5 near the edge of town. Night shifts, mostly. Slow business after 11 p.m., just me, a radio, and the occasional long-haul trucker or drunk local coming in for smokes or coffee. I usually didn't mind. That job taught me how to enjoy quiet. But one night, I got a visitor I still think about to this day. He came in around 1:20 a.m. A tall guy, maybe mid-30s, wearing jeans and a faded bomber jacket that looked like it had been through hell and back. He was swaying slightly, obviously drunk, but not the loud kind. He grabbed a six-pack from the cooler, then leaned over the counter and said, "You want to hear something that'll mess you up?" I assumed it was a joke, the kind of nonsense drunk people say to strangers. I smirked and said, "Sure, why not?" figuring I'd get a story about a wild night out or some nonsense hookup. But this guy's face didn't change. His eyes were bloodshot but locked in. He leaned closer and said, "I killed someone once." I froze. There was no trace of a smile, no punchline coming. I didn't say anything, just blinked and kept my hand on the register. He went on like he was reading from a script. He said he was 19 when it happened, working at a mechanic shop during the day, partying at night. There was a girl he'd started seeing. He didn't say her name, but described her as sweet and stupid in the same breath, which already told me more about him than I wanted to know. They'd gone out one night with friends, drinking, maybe drugs too, though he didn't say it. Around 3 in the morning, they drove out to an abandoned stretch of road behind a quarry, a place kids went when they didn't want to be found. He said she started a fight. Something about another girl. He didn't remember exactly. What he did remember was getting out of the car, slamming the door, and walking away while she screamed at him. According to him, he just kept walking. Down the road. Into the dark. Didn't look back. Let her yell herself hoarse. Eventually, the screaming stopped. He assumed she'd driven off without him. But when he came back an hour later, the car was still there. So was she. Only, she wasn't moving anymore. He said she was face down in the grass, maybe 20 feet from the car. Head cracked against a rock. No witnesses. No tire marks. No signs of another car. She hadn't been attacked. No blood. No obvious trauma. Just a weird angle to the way her neck was bent. He panicked. Thought about calling 911. Thought about dragging her to the car and staging an accident. But then he realized no one knew they were out there. No one knew they'd been fighting. No one even knew they were together that night. So he left her there. He walked back to the main road, flagged down a trucker, and made up a story about being stranded. A week later, her body was found by some kids on bikes. Police ruled it an accident. Drunk girl. Slipped on the rocks. No signs of foul play. He said he went to her funeral, held her mother's hand, told everyone how sorry he was, and nobody ever asked questions. Then he laughed, like he'd just shared an embarrassing memory, not a felony confession. I stood there, completely still. My throat felt tight, and my hands were damp on the counter. I remember thinking, there's no way this is real. He's making this up. But something about the way he said it, the casualness, the calm, it didn't feel like a story. It felt like a memory. Then he looked me dead in the eyes and said, "I only ever tell that story when I'm drunk. Because if I tell it sober, it means I really want someone to stop me." I didn't say a word. He paid for the beer, nodded, and walked out. I called the police an hour later, gave them a description, the plates from the car, everything I could remember. I never found out if anything came from it. No one followed up. No one asked questions. He never came back. But sometimes, on late nights when I'm driving alone and the roads get quiet, I think about that story. And I wonder how many people walk around with secrets that only show themselves when the liquor pulls the lock off their mouths. Next up is Johnny_H. It happened during a summer break in my second year of university. I was back in my hometown working part-time at a liquor store, saving up for textbooks and rent. The store was small and old, tucked into a row of brick buildings that hadn't seen a renovation since the early 90s. It mostly served late-night stragglers, regulars, and the occasional wandering drunk. It was a quiet enough job, until the night this guy came in, drunk off his ass, and said something I haven't forgotten to this day. He looked normal. Mid-40s maybe. Clean clothes, button-down shirt. He didn't stumble or slur his words. But you could tell from his eyes and the faint tremble in his hands that he'd had a few already. He picked up a bottle of bourbon, paid in cash, then lingered. You know when someone's just standing there, like they're not done but don't know how to start? I gave him the usual line. You good, man? He nodded slowly and said, Can I tell you something? I expected something harmless. A complaint about his ex. A drunk story. Some sad venting. But he said, I watched a man die. And I didn't help. Not because I couldn't, but because I didn't want to. He stared at me while I froze behind the counter. Then he started talking. It happened 15 years ago, he said. He was working as a security guard in a warehouse on the edge of the city. Overnight shifts, long hours, almost no visitors. The job was easy. Check cameras, walk the perimeter twice a night, file reports. He did it for nearly a year without incident. One night, around 2:30 a.m., while sitting in the office eating a vending machine sandwich, he heard something on the monitors. One of the motion sensors had triggered in the back storage bay. That happens sometimes. Rats, maybe a raccoon. But this time the camera showed a person. A man, walking slowly through the back of the warehouse where the heavy pallets were kept. He wasn't supposed to be there. At first, the guy thought it might be another guard or someone from the day shift who'd forgotten something. So he grabbed his flashlight and went to check. When he got there, the man was gone. He walked the area, called out, even checked between the stacked shelves, but no sign of anyone. Just a faint smell, something he described as sweet and rotting, like fruit left in a sealed car. He went back to the office, rewound the footage. This is where it started to get strange. The man on the camera never came in through the loading dock. There was no door opened, no other trigger. He just appeared in frame, already mid-stride, walking straight through the shadows. And when he walked past one of the shelves, his body glitched. That's how the guy said it. Like the camera didn't know what to do with him. One frame, he was normal. The next, his head was turned completely backward, then normal again. It freaked him out. But then it got worse. He said at 3:17 a.m., while reviewing the footage for the third time, he heard the door to the office creak open. The door had a slow, high-pitched groan to it. Unmistakable. But when he turned around, no one was there. He got up, searched the hallway, called out again. Nothing. He sat back down, and the monitor had frozen. Just one still image, the warehouse aisle. Same frame. But now, the man was facing the camera. Standing still. Staring. That's when the lights in the hallway shut off. The office lights dimmed, but didn't die completely. Just that buzz of fluorescent hum softening. And for some reason, the guy said, his arms wouldn't move. Not like they were paralyzed, but like they didn't want to. He sat there, for maybe 30 seconds, trying to move, trying to breathe evenly, while on the monitor, the figure slowly lifted one hand and pointed. Not at the camera, at him. Then the screen cut to black. He said he doesn't remember anything after that. Just that at 6 a.m., the day shift guy came in, found him passed out on the floor, and called emergency services. He told the EMTs he must have fainted. Low blood sugar. They gave him fluids, checked his vitals, and sent him home. The footage? Gone. The backup system had a power error logged at exactly 3:17 a.m., and the rest of the night's footage had been corrupted. His manager gave him a warning for falling asleep on duty. He quit the job 2 weeks later. So what does that have to do with watching a man die? That part came years later. He was on a work trip, driving through a small town on his way to a conference. Stopped at a gas station to stretch his legs. When he went inside, he saw a flyer posted on the bulletin board. A man had gone missing. Last seen around the industrial district. There was a grainy photo printed on the page. It was the same man from the footage. Same face. Same eyes. Same watch on his wrist, visible in the photo. Except the flyer was dated 4 years before the night in the warehouse. He said he stared at that flyer for 15 minutes. Read every word. Googled the name later that night. There were no results. No reports. No missing person. No family statements. Like the whole thing had been erased. He said it made him feel two things. 1, that he was never supposed to see that man. And 2, that whatever he saw in that warehouse wasn't from here. He paused then, looked down at the bottle of bourbon in his hand, and said, I told myself I was just tired that night. Sleep deprived. Hallucinating. But every time I go near a warehouse, I swear I smell that same fruit-rotten smell. And it makes my hands go cold. He thanked me for listening, left the store, and disappeared down the road. I never saw him again. But I've worked a lot of night shifts since then. And sometimes, when the cameras glitch just right, I wonder if whatever he saw that night is still walking somewhere, just out of view. One user broken underscore alarm clock. I was bartending at a hole-in-the-wall jazz bar when I heard the confession that stayed with me longer than I care to admit. It was a Monday night, which meant things were slow. We'd get a few regulars, a couple of college kids who wandered in by mistake, and one or two guys who liked to drink alone in the corner and pretend they didn't want to talk to anyone. That night, one of those corner guys came in around 8 p.m. He was older than most, maybe late 50s, early 60s. Wore a sweater too warm for summer, glasses that kept sliding down his nose, and had a habit of swirling his drink for a full minute before taking the first sip. He always ordered the same thing. Double Jameson, neat, no ice, no water. He usually didn't talk much. But that night, something was different. I was cleaning the taps when he called me over and asked if I believed in ghosts. I gave him a chuckle and said, only when they tip. But he didn't laugh. He stared into his glass and said, I don't mean ghosts like what people tell stories about. I mean the kind you carry with you. The kind you don't see until they're sitting in your passenger seat on a quiet drive home. I didn't know what to say to that, so I didn't say anything. Just waited. After a pause, he said, I used to be a teacher. Music mostly. Middle school. I had this one student, bright kid, huge heart, but quiet. You know the kind. Always drawing in the margins. Never raised their hand, but you could tell the wheels were always turning. He didn't say the kid's name. Just called them my favorite. Said this student had a rough home life. The other teachers talked about it. Father not in the picture. Mother constantly working. Lived with their grandmother. Clothes were worn. Lunches were either cold or missing entirely. The kind of kid you didn't worry about because they were too quiet to get in trouble, and that made it easy to overlook how lonely they were. One afternoon, he stayed late to help this student with a small composition assignment. They were working on chords and melody. At the end of the session, the kid gave him a drawing, a little pencil sketch of a man playing piano under a tree with headphones on. They said it was him. I kept it, the man said. Still have it. Folded in my wallet like some people keep photos of their kids. I don't even know why I kept it at the time. It just felt important. He went quiet for a while then. Swirled the last bit of his drink. I poured him another without being asked. Then he said, a few months later, that kid stopped showing up. He called the office, checked the attendance logs, even asked other teachers. No one knew anything. No one seemed to notice they were gone. Finally, he called the house. The number was disconnected. He drove to the neighborhood listed on their school records. Knocked on the door. No answer. Asked around. One neighbor finally told him the kid's grandmother had passed away, and the child had been taken by the state. No one knew where they'd gone after that. They just vanished, he said. Like they'd never been there. For years, he looked. Called agencies. Wrote letters. Sent Christmas cards to P.O. boxes that never wrote back. He even hired a PI once, but it went nowhere. Records sealed. Foster care transfers. Outdated files. That kid became a ghost, he said. And every time I play piano, I wonder if they remember me. Or if I was just one quiet stop on the road to whatever came next. He downed the rest of the drink in one long swallow. Then asked if he could leave me something. Said he carried it for too long. I said sure. He pulled out his wallet, opened a sleeve I hadn't seen before, and carefully slid out a worn piece of paper folded into thirds. He placed it on the bar, flattened it gently. It was the drawing. Faded, creased, but still beautiful. A little pencil sketch of a man sitting under a tree, playing piano with headphones on. You could see the detail in the shading, the way the lines curved around the man's posture, the tiny signature in the bottom corner. He looked at it like it was both a gift and a wound. I try to be a good man, he said. But sometimes, being good isn't enough. Sometimes, the world eats people alive while you're busy teaching scale patterns. He got up, nodded once, and left. Didn't take the drawing. Didn't come back. I kept it for a while. Taped it behind the bar where no customers could see it. Not out of sentimentality, but out of respect. Sometimes I wonder if the student ever grew up. If they remember that music teacher who stayed late to help them finish a composition. Or if they ever saw someone who looked like him and felt something stir without knowing why. Some ghosts don't haunt places. They haunt people. And some confessions don't sound like guilt. They sound like mourning. And finally, user Marvel Addict 77 said, I never planned on telling anyone this. Not ever. But 2 years ago, I got drunk at a friend's birthday party. Like really drunk, blackout levels. And I ended up telling this random guy I'd just met the entire story. He thought I was joking. I let him think that. But I wasn't. It started 10 years ago. I was 23, broke, and working as a janitor at a warehouse on the outskirts of the city. It was temp work. Nights only. The kind of place where you didn't need a background check. And as long as you showed up sober and didn't steal anything, no one really cared who you were. The job was boring. Sweep, mop, wipe down machinery, collect trash, repeat. The whole building was old and mostly automated, with a skeleton night crew. There were 3 of us total. The supervisor was a guy named Al who spent most of the night sleeping in the control booth. The other guy, Rico, worked maintenance. We got along, but we weren't close. Now, here's where it started to shift. This warehouse handled electronics, mid-tier stuff like refurbished laptops, speakers, projectors. Thousands of dollars worth of tech passed through every week. And no one paid much attention to inventory on the night shift. If something small went missing, it was chalked up to processing error or shipping mislabel. Rico figured that out before I did. One night, he pulled me aside behind the loading bay and said, "You ever thought about making a little extra?" I laughed, said something about not wanting to risk it. Then he opened his backpack. Inside were 5 boxed GoPro cameras. He grinned and said, "Walked out with these last week." Nobody said a damn thing. That was the first time I realized how easy it would be. Over the next few months, it became routine. We only took small things that wouldn't trigger weight checks or alerts. Headphones, portable speakers, hard drives. We'd take turns. One night he'd walk out with a few items stuffed inside a folded hoodie. The next it'd be my turn with a lunchbox packed tight. We sold everything online through burner accounts. Met buyers in parking lots. No red flags. We kept it modest, never greedy. It was easy money. Until it wasn't. One night, Al didn't show up. His car was in the lot, but he wasn't in the booth. At first we thought maybe he was in the bathroom or passed out in some dark corner, so we started checking. It took us 20 minutes to find him. He was slumped behind the stacked pallets in loading zone B. His eyes were open, glassy. There was vomit on his shirt and a needle sticking out of his arm. We called 911, but he was gone before they arrived. Turns out Al had a habit we didn't know about. And that night, it killed him. They brought in a replacement the next week. Her name was Devin. Ex-military, sharp as hell. Quiet, but observant. She didn't talk much, but you could tell she didn't miss anything. Within 2 weeks, we knew we had a problem. She started doing inventory spot checks, logging everything, watching cameras, asking questions. So Rico got nervous. He wanted to stop, lay low, wait for her to transfer, or get bored. But I said no. I told him we just had to be smarter. Take less. Space it out. Keep moving. That was my mistake. 3 weeks later, Rico called me in a panic. Said Devin had confronted him about some discrepancies. Nothing major, just missing serial numbers and a weird weight imbalance on a pallet he'd signed off on. He said she gave him a chance to come clean. He didn't. He said he played dumb. Said it must have been a packing error or someone on the day crew screwing around. But Devin wasn't buying it. She knows, he told me. She's just waiting. So we argued. I told him we'd get caught if we bailed now. That if he acted nervous, it'd only make things worse. I told him to stick to the story and not change anything. That was the last time I talked to him. The next night, Rico didn't show up for work. No call. No message. Just gone. I figured he bailed. Maybe ran. Maybe he cracked and skipped town to avoid the fallout. I never saw him again. But Devin? She was still there. And a week later, she pulled me into the office. Said she had some questions. Said Rico had mentioned my name in his reports. That was news to me. He never filed reports. He barely even filled out his timesheet. She said she wanted to know if I'd seen anything. Heard anything. I said no. She stared at me for a full minute. Then she said, "If you did something stupid, this is your chance to fix it before it gets worse." I played dumb. I smiled. I walked out. That night, I took everything. Every camera, every hard drive, every little item I could safely hide. I didn't go back to my apartment. I drove straight to a motel 3 hours away and checked in under a fake name. The next day, I called in sick. The day after that, I called and quit. No explanation. Just gone. It's been 10 years. I've changed states. Changed names once. Never used my real info online. I kept the money small and quiet. Paid cash for everything. No flash. No trail. But I think about Rico a lot. Because something doesn't add up. I went back a few months after I left, just to drive past the place. It was closed. Entirely shut down. Boarded up like no one had worked there in years. But it had only been 6 months. I looked online. No mention of Devin. No employee records. No obituary for Rico. No evidence he'd ever existed. It's like the whole place disappeared. And I still don't know what happened to him. Sometimes I wonder if she was bluffing. Other times, I wonder if she did something about it herself. And when I get too drunk and the walls feel close, I wonder if one day I'll get a knock on my door. From someone who was never supposed to know my name. Well, that's it for today's confession. Drop a confession down below, and let's see how bad it is.